us in so many different ways. And so today we're going to do something very special to express our faith and share during this period. So let's all be seated. Amen. 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 So this is what friendship gets you. Being friends with someone, and then you have to get roped into all kinds of different things. So I would like to welcome my great, awesome, great friend John Becker from WBIR. Thank you for being here. He's going to use his skill and talent to kind of bring out some interesting points from some of our members of our parish. And so Barbara and Cass and Mother Gayle are going to be interviewed by him. So we'll have some chairs here. And I'll turn it to you.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for having me, and it's really nice to be on.
Coordinated, clearly.
Barbara points, I just...
Okay, for the millions who are watching on YouTube, I know that the congregation knows you well, but would you please just introduce yourselves, and then we'll get to some questions.
Okay, I'm Barbara Mott. I'm the vestry clerk, and I've been attending here since Gayle became our vicar. I attended in the 90s, and it was my father's church of the whole history. I'll cut it short. I'm Barbara Mott, and I attend St. Luke's.
Okay.
You might ask her about her father.
I will.
Yes,
Thank
sure.
you.
I'm Gayle Browne. Most people around these areas call me Mother Gayle. The kids used to call me Mama Gayle. So, whatever. I actually wasn't here in the 90s, but I did come in 2000, and was here from 2000 to 2008 as the first priest in charge. And then we were able to grow the what was then a mission to an average attendance of 55, which made us a parish. And so then in 2005, I became the first rector of St. Luke's. But it certainly had a long history of vicars prior to that. I left in 2008, and I was called to a church in Ohio, and then I retired in 2016, ended up back here in 2017 as vicar again. But I really didn't want to be in charge of anything again. So I got with Deacon Ron, who was my deacon, and he agreed to be a deacon in charge. And I agreed to assemble a group of priests, and we rotated until we were lucky enough to get Father Baker. And that is a short history of me.
Thank you.
I'm Catherine Trewhella. Yes. Sure. I'm Catherine Trewhella. I'm from New York originally and grew up cradle Episcopalian, as they say, in St. Peter's Church up there. And then moved to Tennessee in 2021. Found this church, I think, in 2022. See, my history with numbers is going to be a lot more. Despite being a number. So found here, and you'll often hear me confuse St. Luke's and St. Peter's just because they both feel like home at this point. So,
Nice. Feels like home. What a place to start. If you had to describe to the millions who are watching on YouTube, what does this church mean to you? How would you describe this church?
I would say I came to this church when I wanted to find community. I was 14 hours away from my closest family. I had moved knowing no one and wanted something that felt familiar. And so falling into place was I had tried a couple of their churches, and I've told Barbara the story too many times, but it didn't have, none of them had the Lift Every Voice and Sing hymnal that I had grown up with. And it was really important to me. I grew up in a church that was incredibly diverse, incredibly active socially and in the community, and I wanted a place that mimicked that and had that for themselves. And so when I walked in and saw the hymnals being used by Candace and by the crew, I was like, oh, this is it. Yeah. So it really feels familiar, it really feels like home, and it really feels like I can call on anyone in the church on a Tuesday and go, hey, call
from you about that. How would you describe this church to outsiders?
It's sort of the same words. You come home when you come to this church. There's a sign in the parish that says welcome home. I have served many churches and have had a joy in serving them all. But my heart always comes back to here because it's home.
Barbara, how about you?
My father was a priest here in the 70s, and there's a whole background to that. And at the time, I think the Motts that came were the only white people that were coming at the time, and this church was full. When you came in, you had to find a place to sit, the way you do with like funerals. And I'd spent my Christian life as an evangelical United Brethren up until the time I was about 14. And my father was an evangelist in the Evangelical United Brethren Church, which was very, very much like the Methodists, and used Methodist hymnals and liturgy and Sunday school materials, and it was a small denomination here in town. For many reasons, I think largely due to the racism, and that he was working for integration and speaking from the pulpit, and he spoke quite vehemently when a situation arose. And I have to tell this, I'm putting my sermon that I prepared for today aside, and we're going to talk about God's love for all of his creatures, regardless of the color of his skin. So this was at maybe 64, something like that. Anyway, the superintendent heard about it. The attendance dropped by 2/3 the next Sunday. And he was moved out to the campus chapel, which was way out on National Highway. Wonderful people out there, and where he had been assigned several years earlier. Anyway, he went back to the Episcopal Church and was a supply priest, he was ordained originally Episcopal, was not happy with the emphasis on status and money that the Episcopal Church, and this was in Minnesota, he went and explored different, but ended up in the Episcopal Churches for most of his career. There was also the 60s, and so he also became more liberal, and of course he was working at a personal level for integration, and at a great cost, but he felt more at home in the Episcopal Church. Bishop Sanders, the bishop of the 20th century, Bishop Bill Sanders sent him after being a supply priest around East Tennessee quite a bit, Newport, Gatlinburg, sent him to St. Luke's, and he loved St. Luke's, and St. Luke's loved him. And he also was one who, when he's gregarious, imagine that, he talks a lot. Everyone, and people that have nothing to do with St. Luke's, and they hear that I'm with one of them said, St. Luke, friend of Rose's, she said, I knew your father and I knew your mother, and I cried going home that day. It was worth it.
You articulated the rich history this church has with activism. I think it was founded in 36 as a place of worship for Black people who could not worship in other churches. Yes. So as we look forward, what can St. Luke's do as a parish in this community to maintain that spirit? What would you say, Ms. Barbara?
We had we've always been about outreach, and we created a coffee place, Common Ground. Common Ground
was a connection.
Yes, and they're already coming to our church. Then we had the pandemic, and so, but we're working, we've done a lot of work on the building itself. We have, new members that are just really engaged. And, Annabelle Henley is our senior warden. She got assigned as senior warden by the ministry while she was out of the country.
So, Mother Gayle, what would you say, looking at this history, how do you build on that in the future?
Yeah, well, the Common Ground Cafe was really a big effort to do that because that picture over there of Father Jones in the '60s,
Yeah.
he was kind of the iconic vicar of Knoxville, actually. And this place was a meeting ground for a lot of the Knoxville College students, sit-ins and counters. There are a lot of them organized in this space. In the '80s, building on that looked like, and I was not here then, the vicar, I believe, was Paige Buckholz at that time, was making arrangements with the Knoxville Hospitality group, Fish.
Yeah.
They wanted to start an East Knoxville center, and so half of our building, got half over there, was taken over as a dedicated space by the food pantry. And about every Monday and Wednesday, about 400 people come there. And that's what Barbara meant when she said we built on the people that were coming. One day, I was here since I was retired and didn't have another job, I could be here, and it was raining, it was cold, and people were waiting outside. And I never had done that because I worked at Oak Ridge. I was a bivocational priest, so I never had been here on Monday and Wednesday. Well, when I saw that, I thought, well, this is stupid. So I opened the doors and invited them to come in and that I'd make some coffee. And they wouldn't come in. And so I came back in, put on my down jacket, got a rolling cart that was meant for an 80 rolling cart, made coffee, stuck cups on it, pushed it out the door up to our porch and served them coffee out of there. Well, this went on every Monday and Wednesday till about, for, I don't know, maybe a month or so. And then finally, an older black gentleman who, I think I heard most people calling him Uncle around here, and I'm not even sure exactly what his name is. Yeah, so all I knew was Uncle. But Uncle came up, put his hand on my shoulder and said, I think we're ready to come in. After a month, you know. So I tell that story because I think that it takes a proactive meeting people on their ground and forming a relationship with them. It's not just about putting up posters and saying we're going to do this. And the cafe just, you know, it actually grew too big for the space. We started having 148 people up there with a full breakfast and did not have facilities to handle it. So that was kind of why after the pandemic we had lost some leadership, we had lost some financial backing, and we just thought we needed to regroup. And
So what I'm hearing from you is getting back to that.
yeah, well, either getting back to that or at least back to that idea. I mean, this is a different place after the pandemic,
Sure.
whether that would work again, and we know that we don't have the kitchen facilities to do that full breakfast. We know that we don't have enough space to have 148 people sitting down at one time in that room. So, you know, maybe it wouldn't be the Common Ground Cafe, maybe it would look different.
Sure.
But I think that model of getting to know, of knowing the neighborhood, being here sometime during the week when some of us might not be, even if it's just on a lunch break sometime, and talking to people, especially on a Monday or a Wednesday, and finding out what they're interested in and what they would like to see happen, and realizing they're not just to say, oh, we would like this, this, and this. I mean, you really got to do you got to form relationships with people.
And how about you, the future?
I would say, it sounds corny, but practicing what you preach on for everyone. Like, there are quite a few churches that praise inclusivity. And when you look from there up on the altar, it's still all white, straight, usually men. And it's hard to say you're inclusive when the front of your church doesn't look that way. And so to have the diversity we do between the LGBT plus community, between different diversities in the people that are in our congregation, that are reading, that are coming to speak, that are coming to talk with us, to perform, to be here, to have that diversity not just be a tagline, but really be practiced. And then for us as the congregation, it's our, and I say this also on the vestry, so like congregation asterisk, but congregation, it's our priority to then, even if we're not walking around thumping a Bible, still, we're still being kind, we're still being outgoing, we're still dedicating ourselves to causes. A lot of us are involved in activism quietly and loudly. And to be encouraged to do that and to have this place as a foundational block to then go out and do that is only going to keep us growing. So.
Lastly, and this is simple, how should people feel when they walk out the door after a Sunday morning? What should they leave with? Joy.
A feeling of inner peace.
I was going to say warm and fuzzy.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We'll take just a moment while we kind of regroup here, and then we'll be continuing with the Nicene Creed, which I believe on page 11.